Hi everyone, and welcome to Ruth Reacts to Books. I'm your host, Ruxie, Ruth McGouth, and today I'm reacting to In Defense of Witches by Mona Chollet. This book originally was written in French, and so the translator was Sophie Lewis. This is a book that I read for my book club that I'm in here in the town I moved to. And so as I do in my show here, I'm going to read to you what the back of the book says, and then I'm going to react to the book and let you know what I thought about it. So here's what it says on the back of the book. Mona Chollet's In Defense of Witches is a brilliant, well-documented celebration by an acclaimed French feminist of the witch as a symbol of female rebellion and independence in the face of misogyny and persecution. Centuries after the infamous witch hunts that swept through Europe and America, witches continue to hold a unique fascination for many, as fairy tale villains, practitioners of pagan religion, as well as feminist icons. Witches are both the ultimate victim and the stubborn, elusive rebel. But who were the women who were accused and often killed for witchcraft? What types of women have centuries of terror censored, eliminated, and repressed? Celebrated feminist writer Mona Chollet explores three types of women who are accused of witchcraft and persecuted. The independent woman, since widows and celibates were particularly targeted. The childless women, since the time of the hunts marked the end of tolerance for those who claimed to control their fertility. And the elderly woman, who has always been an object of at best pity and at worst horror. Examining modern society, Chollet concludes that these women continue to be harassed and oppressed. Rather than being a brief moment in history, the persecution of witches is an example of society's seemingly eternal misogyny, while women today are direct heirs of those who were hunted down and killed for their thoughts and actions. With fiery prose and arguments that range from the scholarly to the cultural, In Defense of Witches seeks to unite the mythic image of the witch with modern women who seek to live their lives on their own terms. This book was quite a challenge for me. And as I was reading it, I kept going in and out of all kinds of different thoughts. I was really conflicted. I'd be like, oh, I don't like this book, and I like this book. And so I gave it 4 stars after lots of consideration, and at the end of the book, I did give it 4 stars. What I liked about the book was that I did feel like there was a lot of knowledge that was provided. And I do feel like knowledge is power, and that although there is lots of things that are very difficult in the world and a lot of hurdles that people who are female have to overcome, and people who identify as female have to overcome, having knowledge is going to help in that fight. And so even though it's sometimes can be very difficult to be gaining that, and it can feel very depressing in the moment when you're kind of learning some things, I do like having knowledge, and I felt like that was a really important part of this, because obviously this is a nonfiction book, which is outside the realm of what I normally read, as you maybe know, those of you who have been with me for a while. And also it was very well written, as the back of the book says, with fiery prose. Like, it's obviously Mona Chollet is a very well written, well spoken author, and so it was beautifully written. I do think that the back of the book kind of makes it sound a lot lighter than it really is, even though if you really listen, it's pretty dark. And I will say the book was dark AF, okay? It really has almost nothing to do with witches. The first little tiny part did talk a little bit about the history of witches and the witch hunts and things like that, but the majority of the book truly has to do with kind of a modern history of feminism, and more about how poorly women are treated. And there were lots of things that I didn't know about that I learned about, because there are parts of my life that I haven't experienced. I have children, and so I haven't experienced what it would be like. You know, I chose to have those children, and I was able to, and so I haven't been in a position where I've had to experience what it would be like to be someone who either didn't want to have children or wasn't able to have children, and so I haven't been in that position. I haven't had to go through that as others have. And so that's one example of something where, you know, there was lots of learning for me that I got to learn in this book. And I can't wait to go and meet with my book club here in a couple weeks and hear what others thought as they went through and read this book, because we have some varied people in the book club, and it'll be interesting to hear everybody's thoughts and feelings about it. What I did not like about the book is it was so incredibly depressing. I mean, reality bites, right? And the reality of our situation as women in this book is that it's a pretty tough thing to read about. It gets into some of the recent things. You know, if you read the foreword to this book, it's actually written by someone who has a master in fine arts from the University of Iowa, the Iowa Writers Workshop. So you can check that out. I thought about reading it, but then I thought that might not be allowed. So, but the foreword of the book, which is just a couple pages, definitely much more goes into like what the book is really about. So if you're thinking about it, go to your public library and just read that foreword, and that'll give you much more of an idea of like more about what you would be reading if you were to read this book. I got this from our university library, and so it should be available at your local library. And also this really was more a book that gives you knowledge. There wasn't any solution suggested. It was really just providing information about where we're at and where we've been, a historical story of truth. And I think like, if you're not ready to hear that, don't read the book, because you're not going to, I think I can think of lots of people in my life, not necessarily, I'm not talking about you necessarily who's watching this, but I can think of lots of people that I know who would read this and who would not believe the things that are written here. Probably people that aren't female and they might, that might set it's hard when you think about that women aren't believed about certain things, and they aren't even believed about their own stories about how they're treated. And so I think it is a challenging book to read. So I got to put that out there. And at the end of the day, like, I've seen that meme that says they didn't burn witches, they burned women. And that's kind of like boils down to what this book really is about. And it goes deeply into that. And it goes deeply into how women are treated and how they have been treated and how they continue to be treated, even though we maybe feel like things are better now. And they are better in some ways, and they are still bad in some ways. So the food that I chose, I put a link to it in the chat, is my very, very favorite bread of all time. And I picked that because I felt like this book was very kind of dense and nutrient filled. And so this bread is delicious. It's called, in the recipe book that I used to have, it's called golden onion dill bread. The recipe that I found online for it that I shared is just called onion dill bread, but does talk in the blog post that it came from. Like, they do talk about the cookbook, The Frugal Gourmet, which is where the recipe originally came from that I got. It was a gift to me from my dad when I was a young college person, and it's one of my favorite recipes. I have never gotten it to rise. They have it rising beautifully in their blog post. So whenever I make it, it's like a super dense, delicious, kind of it almost seems like a kind of an Irish soda bread, because I can never get it to rise. But if you can get it to rise, go for it. I'm sure it's really good anyway, but it has a lot of nutrients because it has onions in it, it has cheese in it, and it has dill in it. It's delicious. So there's a lovely recipe for that in the description for this episode. And then I went back and forth. I was trying to decide, like, what do I do about my nails? Because I was, all thinking about makeup and nails, and as a woman, like, thinking about, like, is that something that I'm forced to do because I feel like I have to? And I was like, should I just not have any nails for this episode? And I went back and forth and around in circles with myself about this, and I just decided that I would wear some nails, and I decided to just pick like the most beautiful ones that I had that I have been wanting to wear myself, that is like what I want. And so these are the nails that I chose. It's called Nightlife. Many of the nails I'm showing you on here are not going to be available for sale on the page because Colorstreet changes they change their nails all the time. So I've had this one for a long time and I've not put it on. And I'm so excited to wear this because I think they are so gorgeous and beautiful. They're like blue with sparkles, and blue is my favorite color. And I just was talking to a friend who's also reading this, who's in the book club this morning, and we were talking about makeup. And, you know, I have always loved wearing makeup, and I don't feel like I have to do it. I do it because I like it. I like that I can wear makeup. I almost feel like more people should be able to wear makeup. And I was thinking earlier today, and I was remembering back to high school. I went to high school in the 1990s. Yes, kids, it was the 1900s. And when I was in high school, like, there were some guys that would wear eyeliner, and at least my group of friends, we thought they were so cool and hot when they wore their eyeliner, because that was kind of cool back then. And I do wish that the world was more open and more people could experiment and it would be more accepted. And hopefully we'll get to a place where that is acceptable, and to a place where women don't feel like they have to look a certain way. But unfortunately, we're not quite there yet. And I definitely have seen in my life and in my career, you have to dress a certain way. You have to look a certain way to be respected, to be listened to. And so facts are facts, but I live my life. And if you know me, you know that I am unapologetically me most of the time. Can't really help it. And so I hope all of you continue being unapologetically you. You are awesome and you are loved. Don't forget that. Have a wonderful week, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.